Such was the state of theological thought in Germany when Kant appeared. His critique of pure reason revealed the limitations of human reason and reduced the whole work of the rationalist to a heap of ruins. So we had sort of completed until this sentence, and justly has he been, that is Kant, been described as God's greatest gift to his country. So Kant's thought, there's no doubt that Kant's thought is very, very important. And how do we relate to Kant's thought will depend on whether we will belong to the traditional Abrahamic injunction or to the modernity, whether it is Islamic modernity, Muslim modernity, or Western modernity, or Christian modernity. So in a sense, Islamic modernist and Muslim modernist and Christian modernist, liberal modernists, atheist modernists, they're all followers of Kant in that sense. And I'll try to, in this video, I'll try to give the basic argument for why accepting Kant's thinking actually explicitly requires rejecting the way of Abraham, Millat Abikum Ibrahim. We have been, Jews claim to be following Ibrahim, Christians claim to be following Ibrahim, and there's a clear conjunction. There's a clear injunction in Quran to Millat Abikum Ibrahim to follow Abraham's faith, to follow Ibrahim's way, and Ibrahim's way, as we know, is worshipping God. So whether we will worship the God of Abraham, or we will follow Kant, there's no middle way. And I'll try to explain why. So then, Mankana, whosoever wants to live should live, with clarity, and whosoever wants to die should die with clarity about what the way they have chosen for themselves. Okay. And the position Iqbal has vis-a-vis Kant in this here, makes his position a Muslim modernist position and make him a follower of Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. Even though in his poetry he has at least seeds of a different thought, which reject this modernism to a certain extent. And accepting this modernism is tantamount to rejecting the essence of Islam. Which is worship of the Lord of Abraham and the Lord of Isaac and Jacob and Muhammad and Jesus, peace be upon him all. So I'll try to make this clear in this video, hopefully. At least, lay the foundation for it. But we'll be discussing these things on this channel as long as we are around. Okay, so the basic thing which Kant reject is what he calls servility, servitude, or what we in Arabic will call al-abudiyya, or worship. That's what he rejects for human beings. And Kant's basic claim is that human beings shouldn't worship anyone else, not even God. They should only worship themselves. And worshipping God or any other creature is basically giving up your humanity, disrespecting your humanity. That's the basic, the essence of Kant's moral and practical philosophy. And this rejection of worship and regarding worship as contrary to our humanity is an important aspect of not only Kant's thinking but also his life, his mature life, because Kant's parents were Kant grew up in a pietistic pietist family. So he came from a pietistic family, and pietism was a movement within Protestantism. In Germany, which emphasized, among other things, sort of absolute reliance on God. That's what they preached. Absolute reliance on God. There's tawakkul ala Allah. Like the Sabbath, you find these sort of thing. And what these philosophers described as complete rejection of moral autonomy. Because morality for a pietist was complete submission to God. And he rejected both of these aspects of mature Kant. Rejected both these aspects, the absolute reliance on God and complete submission to the will of God. Because Kant thought that This absolute reliance on God and complete submission to the will of God was a servile attitude. Servitude, which was against human dignity. In fact, mature Kant thought that absolute reliance on God and submission to the will of God was equal to denying disrespecting our humanity and our human dignity. Manfred Kuhn, who has written the best Manfred Kuhn have written the best biography of Kant in English. Is called Kant biography. He says in that book that he rejected pietistic view of absolute reliance on God and submission to the will of God. That is, he rejected his parents' religion or this aspect of their parents' religion, because for him it was, and he quotes Kant there, a servile attitude. In German, knechtische Gemütsart, knechtische Gemütsart, the servile attitude. And this basically is rejecting. This is rejecting. Obviously, Kuhn doesn't say that. He is very happy about rejecting worship, the notion of worship, or ubudiyya. On my copy of Kuhn's book, when I first read it, on the margin I wrote in Arabic, Yunkirul Ubudiyya. That's what he does. He rejects worship by thinking that complete reliance on God and submitting your will to the will of God, absolute submission, which is Islam, voluntary, obviously, absolute submission to the will of God, He thinks that it is a servile attitude. Knechtische Gemütsart. That is Yunkirul Ubudiyya. He rejects worship. He rejects the notion of worship. He rejects the whole essence of the religion of Abraham. Servile attitude. Knechtische Gemütsart. Gemütsart in German mean a few things. So Gemütsart in German means disposition, spirit, like personality, temper, nature of something. And knechtisch means something, anything, Knechtschaft mean menial. Knechtisch mean menial work. Knechtisch mean menial. So, domestic servant is called knechtisch. Submissiveness, submission. Submissive person would be knechtisch. Adjective. Meek. Subservient. So it's basically against, the opposite of independent and self-sufficient and autonomous. So knechtisch. So for Kant, relying on submitting to God is knechtische Gemütsart. It's servile disposition or temper, servile attitude, and it is demeaning a person, humanity. It is insulting, disrespecting our humanity. In his book Metaphysics of Morals, Kant says that humanity requires us to our humanity. Kant, humanity is something intrinsic. Its worth is intrinsic, absolute in that sense. And this humanity consists in our ability, that's in Metaphysics of Morals and other books, in our autonomy. So give up our autonomy even for God is giving up our humanity. And in this sense, worship of God is giving up our humanity, disrespecting our humanity. And in Metaphysics of Morals, he teaches us to respect ourselves, respect our humanity by not submitting to anyone else. Anyone else be that other men, angels, God, but to submit only to our own reason, our own will. And that's what constitutes our humanity for Kant. And submitting to anybody else is basically disrespecting and giving up humanity. Submission to the will of God is equal to giving up our humanity. So in Metaphysics of Moral, he says that we should fulfill our duties, moral duties, but not, he said, but not abjectly, that's English translation, abjectly, not in servile, submissive spirit. This translator does the same word. Manfred Kuhn did servile attitude. This translator does servile spirit, but it you can servile disposition, servile temper, servile nature, spirits. All are point translation. So we should fulfill our duties, but not abjectly, not in servile spirit, but always respecting our humanity, respecting our dignity as human being and as persons. So we fulfill our duty, but as persons who has those duties, who has duties, his own reason lays upon him. So he fulfills those duties not because they are ordained by somebody else, but is legislated by his own reason. So that's what he calls self-legislation. That's what he calls autonomy. And for him, morality is autonomy. In fact, Kant invented the whole notion of, the idea of autonomy and morality were interlinked in many other thinkers before Kant, but Kant really invented this actual idea of morality as autonomy. And on that basis, he rejects submission worship because that is heteronomy. So that's his basic insight. And in the next video, I'll go through his argument, why he thinks we should worship ourselves and not worship God. Although I give the basic reason, but I haven't given Kant's argument, so I'll give Kant's argument in a bit more detail in the next video.